Tom Harper's back and he just made a movie called The Wild Rose, which I really enjoyed. So I was hoping he would keep the streak going with this one, since the cast is really good too. With Felicity Jones and Eddie Redmayne in the main roles, who have been on screen together before. In a little movie called The Theory of Everything, which was really good. And they were really good in it, so I guess they were hoping to recreate that magic here. And you know, the story here seemed compelling enough too, and it's about two pioneers in their own fields. Felicity Jones plays an aeronaut, a balloon pilot, and Redmayne plays an aspiring meteorologist. And together they're going to attempt to break the record for the highest up a human being has ever flown. That's the basic premise here, and the balloon trip is actually shown in more or less real time. However, we do get a fair amount of flashbacks in between too, for the sake of making it a little bit more interesting. To get a bit more into the character motivations as well as their backstory. And just to break up the monotony, as coming up with exciting things to happen in a balloon can't be easy. Which brings me to my biggest issue with this movie, because I decided to look a bit into it. And turns out that this is a highly fictionalized account of what actually happened. It's based on real events and Redmayne's character was real too. Except he wasn't a bachelor, he was married, and he didn't go up with a woman. He went up with another man. So Jones's character is actually completely made up, as is a ton of other stuff too. And I'll be honest, I'm definitely not a fan of when people decide to completely rewrite history like this. Especially when they do it with a heavy hand like in this case, but still decide to mix in elements of truth as well. At that point, why not just take inspiration and completely fictionalize the entire thing? Because had they done that, I wouldn't have had any real issues with this story here. They could have just changed the name of the guy and the date of the event, and it would have pretty much been fiction anyway, since the actual balloon didn't even take off from London. And I have to very much question some of the events that took place on the actual trip as well. Because that's another thing that bothered me. They really Hollywoodized this little balloon trip. They threw in some pretty ridiculous stuff in there, and at least some of that was absolutely made up. And most of which was absolutely unnecessary, so yeah, I'm not a fan of how they handled this story. But with that being said, I did like the main performances, although I've seen both of them do better. And I did find the stuff that took place outside the balloon to be somewhat compelling as well. And not all of the stuff in the actual balloon was terrible either by any means. I just didn't like the way they twisted the facts for no apparent reason at all, and how they went full on Hollywood with the action. But I mean, at the core of this is a really fascinating story, but one that deserved better execution. Speaking of which, I do also think they relied too much on CGI for certain parts of this. Or if they were going to rely this much on CGI, they needed a bigger budget. And I only really mention this because there were some really great looking sequences in this. There's one shot in particular toward the end that's absolutely stunning. And in some of the scenes, even some of the action scenes, it genuinely looks like they're up in an actual balloon. And I couldn't tell if it was done in front of a green screen or not, but it looked real. So I know they were capable of that level of excellent execution. But a lot of it unfortunately just wasn't that great. Which means they probably ran out of money and couldn't do as good of a job as they wanted to. Now, having said all that, and I know it might sound like I hated this, but I didn't really. I thought it was okay, I found it to be interesting and entertaining enough for what it was. And I wish I hadn't even looked up the real story and just pretended this was all made up. However, the question remains, would I recommend this? Not really. I mean, I've seen far worse, but it really just wasn't anything all that remarkable. So you know, maybe check it out, maybe don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.